Good morning. This morning we're going to go and look at the Middle Southern, or the Southern Middle, depending on how you want to look at it, part of the property. And mostly this is just a matter of looking at 4 big trees. The first of them is this lychee tree. And this is a Brewster Lychee. It was planted in 1955 when the house was built. And the main difference with this tree versus last year, this time, is that there's a lot of daylight right here. And that's basically because of Hurricane Irma. There were some big branches overhanging the roof that I was concerned about. And so the day before the hurricane struck, we sawed that, and by we I mean not me, with a pole saw, and a manual kind, not the little chainsaw on the end of the pole. It was a lot of work for my son and his friend, and basically took out a huge, a few huge branches from this area. And when the hurricane hit, there was one other branch that fell down that was over here, but nothing hit the house. So that was a success. And the tree is on its way to getting smaller, so that's also good. So this is our big Haden tree. And last year I said it was between 80 and 90 years old, so I guess I have to say it's between 81 and 91 years old this year. And this is shocking to most people that come on the property because, of course, it used to be a lot bigger. And in November, we had a tree service with a bucket truck come in and take off a lot of the top of the tree. And this part is still Haden, so there's few Haden mangoes just on this area, and this part of the branch I'm probably going to top work to another variety. And the reason why these shoots have grown a little taller than they usually are when I top work them is that I'm still deciding what variety to put on that. Same thing for here. This is all stuff. I mean, it's a little bit difficult in that I need to get a big ladder to graft onto this area, but I would like to have a nice new variety on this tree, so as people come into the farm they get to see several varieties of mango. This is a avocado that used to be growing through the tree. It was rather tall. We made it short, and then of course it keeps wanting to be an avocado tree again. I'm pretty sure this is a branch of the Haden tree right here, but I'm just treating it as a separate tree because it sort of looks that way. Cut it back, and this is everything except for this particular shoot has now been top worked to cotton candy. Of course, this was the first area of the tree that I top worked, and this is Julie in the front and Juliet in the back. And we've got a lot of fruit set in certain parts. There's a few fruit, of course, always that don't develop. But this is a great success, I think, because when Hurricane Irma was coming through, I cut back all of these grafts. I didn't want to lose them, and so that was a good thing because we lost a lot of grafts, or new grafts around the property. But even with being cut back, it's still fruited, so I'm happy about that, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of customers happy about that also. And this, what I'm standing on right here, was the wood from this tree, the big chunks of wood, and we got a company in with a chipper and they ran it through, and so now we're using it for all sorts of projects. So yeah, still, they're all Julie in here, and Juliet is in the back. Bromeliads are in bloom. What's sticking up here. This little branch here I've top worked to sweet tart. And there's another part of the same branch that looks like its own tree back there, and I have top worked that to sonpari. And these branches up here, those are a big challenge. They're sort of at the top end of what I can reach with a ladder. And of course that's the area that got most affected by the wind. So whenever even we have 20-mile-an-hour winds, if I don't trim the grafts back, like the length of the graft, and also trim the leaves, they get blown off. And so I've spent quite a bit of time up there on the ladder trying to graft this Haden over to other things. And here, finally we're getting some mulch. We don't get very much because the company that's dropping it mostly works in West Palm, but we're thankful for everything we can get. It's very helpful for our situation because we don't irrigate very much at all, and so not only does the mulch provide some nutrients, but it also helps conserve moisture. So this is the next, well, I guess that was the third tree, the last tree that I started working on as far as top working. This is the second to the last of them. And this used to be Haden, of course. And I've been working on this lower branch, converting that to Julie. I've put Carla here and Phoenix over here. And the trick really is trying to figure out what is not Phoenix at this point, and that goes for all these areas that I've been top working. It's especially difficult when you have some larger branches that survive the different winds, and then you have a smaller branch that's torn off, and then you have to figure out if that's Haden or not, and usually I don't check this tree all the time, so it's you have to look for the graft and look where the leaves are and all that kind of thing to try to get everything converted over to the variety that you want. Of course, it's not the end of the world to have the occasional Haden branch, and if I don't particularly want that going forward, then after it fruits I could always cut it back and graft onto those shoots. But anyway, Phoenix here is supposed to be a wonderful variety. And then this whole branch here is Angie. This was the first Angie graft that I got going on this branch, and it took forever to establish. And there's actually one little mango with a dragonfly on top of it up there. And right up on the top of the tree, there's lots of branches coming out, and that's Haden. And at the moment, I'm thinking the Haden is wonderful there, in part because it's rather high, but mostly because there's a rather large beehive that is in a hollow of one of the old branches there. So there's just swarms of bees around there. It's not an environment I really want to, like work in. I've never been stung by one of those bees, but I like to give them their space. So down here, I've grafted pickering. So I think pickering would benefit from the air circulation below it, and I think this would be a good height for it. So we've got most of these are successful grafts, and still working on this area over here. There's a few more grafts to do there. So, last one coming up. This is the first tree that I started top working, and if you're one of those viewers of the first video that we did, you already know that a storm got one of the southern branches into the power lines, and that was a bad thing because it was the middle of the night and we had a crew come out to trim the branch off of that side, and we got our electricity back. But then after looking at the tree and thinking about it, I got a tree company in to cut it way back, so hopefully we wouldn't have that problem again. So after cutting it back, I thought about varieties that I'd like to grow on that tree instead of Haden. Haden's a fine fruit, but there's a lot of lovely varieties out there. So anyway, of course I put Julie on the lower branch, and also I tried to get dwarf varieties on the side close to the electric lines. So for instance, right here, this is Jahanger. And this is our Julie over here, this whole section. So a lot of fruit hanging. And I cut this Julie back even further than the one on the first tree that we looked at, the first mango tree. When Hurricane Irma was approaching, I really didn't want to lose any of these grafts. And even though they were cut way back, they are producing a lot of fruit this year. First time, less than 2 years since these branches were grafted. And then I have Pettigrew here and over to the other side of this branch. You see I can show you a little better here. So Pettigrew leaves look quite a bit different. They almost look like an ice cream mango leaf. Very narrow. So it's easy to tell this apart. We have Julie here. I put Juliet on this branch. We actually seem to have a lot of one panicle of fruit anyway on this Juliet section. And this is Orange Essence. And as you might notice, I'm trying to leave myself a trail of breadcrumbs. Starting to write on the branches here. This is Orange Essence. And I have to remember to, of course, go over it every year or so, because those anything that you put on a branch, even if it's paint, it will eventually wear off, or the plant will grow out of it. But anyway, we have a lot of Orange Essence here. And now that you know my system, you can tell this is cotton candy. So that whole branch is cotton candy. And then over here, K3 or Kathy, that part of the branch. This is Honey Kiss. It's not just that one branch. That was just the one that was easiest to write on. So I like to go with easy. Honey Kiss is actually this part of the branch, and it goes up over here. And then starting from here over is Angie. I wrote that on that young branch there. So we take a look at this. This here, this cluster with quite a bit of fruit actually, that is Honey Kiss. And then all the rest of this here is Angie. So all of this has been grafted less than 2 years ago. And of course, grafting onto an old rootstock or an old plant like this has a tremendous root system, a lot of momentum for growing. And instead of growing more Haden, put grafts on it, and the grafts have just grown very quickly. And fortunately, they had a quiet time in the winter where they weren't growing as much, and so they were able to flower and fruit this year. So I think that's just about it for this particular section of the grove. And it's been a sort of a wild and crazy year. Of course they all are, but not only did we have these projects planned for, major top work projects. This is not the typical way you top work a large mango tree. Like Walter Zill, when he goes to top work a big tree, he converts the whole tree with 3 or 4 grafts. And that's because of cutting all the branches way back to the center and then grafting there, and then of course they grow out as as they grow out and spread and turn into a big tree eventually. But with these trees, I was trying to keep the branches, the existing branches, intact. And it looks like a much more mature tree than one that has been top worked only, less than 2 years ago. The thing that has happened, of course, is that when the grafts were young, it was really easy to tell which were Cotton Candy and which were Kathy and whatever. But now as they're growing into each other. So hopefully we'll be able to tell the difference of the fruit. And then when it comes time at the end of the season to trim the plants, I'm just going to make sure to trim the branches or the grafts away from the other kinds. Like, if we have a major branch here and a major branch here, then I will make sure that there's a space between the growth from each of those branches. So anyway, a lot of work, but it's been lots of fun, and soon we're going to have a good supply of all sorts of new mangoes. This year is not going to be our banner year, of course, because this is going to be the first year that we get fruit, and only some of the varieties seem to be producing that. I think it would have been better, especially for this tree, if we hadn't had Hurricane Irma, because there are some branches on the top of the tree that just were hit hard by the hurricane, and so they're still recovering. But if you happen to have big trees, there definitely are options on how to handle it, and this is one strategy. But anyway, whatever is happening in your yard, hope it's turning out really well for this year and for all the years going forward.